Welcome to this week's Ask GMBN, where we have got absolutely tons of questions to get through, so I'm not going to waste any time. I'm going to get straight into it with this one I love from Starfeo, who says, nice job to Blake last week soloing Ask GMBN. He did do a great job, Bingers. He was really nervous about it because it's a bit intimidating in the room on your own, but he smashed it, so well done, Blake. Starfare is asking, I'd love to get some MTB book recommendations from us. Technique, history, etc. What are your favourites? Well, I've got to say, one of my favourites is by a guy called Martyn, MTB Mountain Biking Skills and Techniques. It's a fabulous book and it is available on Amazon, so go and check that out. But seriously, a book that I would recommend, that I would read, I would love to read a book by Steve Peat, talking all about his career, covering all of his favourite races and all of his wins, World Cup championships, also his World Championship win in 2009, so that's a great story getting to that win, definitely worth a look. Also the EWS yearbook from last year, I think that would be a really good read, put together by all the journalists who follow the EWS series, and that's available, I think it's ewsyearbook.com, so go and check that out. Some great books to look at. Especially that guy, Martyn Ashton, he's a genius. Oscar Hatcher, he's asking, will you guys be coming to the Commonwealth Games in Australia? They're on his local trails, and England obviously is a huge part of the Commonwealth. Well, yes, we would love to be there. I can see from following some Australian riders that it's a big deal for you guys down there, and it's going to be a huge event. So definitely worth following. I'm looking forward to see the results, but you know what? I don't think we're going to be there ourselves, which is a shame because we've got a very busy year on GMBN this year and we're going to be all over the place, which isn't a shame. Next one from Paul Vegan Cross. Well done, Paul. He says, hi guys, I've got a Scott Spark 930. I've recently upgraded to SRAM Eagle Group Set 1050. Will a Hope freehub fit it? Because he loves the sound. Oh, so do I. Now, I wasn't sure about the answer on this one, so I asked Neil Donahue. He knows everything. And he says it is possible, but you need to find a SRAM XD driver to fit on the cassette body, and that means you'll be able to fit that larger cassette itself. It should work fine. You'll have that lovely sound, which we all love. But there is another way to get a really good sound like that. You can have your hub serviced, and I can show you how to do that on this video that's coming up, and you'll get a nice look and sound with that buzz.
The freehub body, often called the cassette body, is this central part of the hub that the cassette sits on top of. Now, its primary job is to allow the drivetrain to work and also disengage to allow you to freewheel. Now, inside this, the typical type of freehub body has a pull and ratchet system. Now, just in general use, it's going to get gunked up and it becomes a bit slow, a bit draggy, and sometimes it can even slip. So you don't have to do a full hub service to make this work. Here's the real quick way to just make sure that your freehub body is clean, well lubricated and doesn't stick.
Next up, a question from Martin HH, who says, I don't know which bike to choose, hardtail or full suspension. I like to bunny hop, wheelie, endo and some fun tricks and do the other stuff on the downhill and cross country. Any advice? You know what, you can do all of that stuff on both those bikes. I guess it's got to come down to what terrain you're riding, what your local terrain is like. If you really find that you're riding a lot of fire trail, really flat terrain, almost gravel riding, then a cross-country bike's a no-brainer. But if you've got some off-road stuff, then you've really got to weigh it up, you know, how hardcore is it? Because it's only once you really start firing down those rough trails and downhills with some speed that you're going to really get a great advantage of full suspension, and some really gnarly climbs where you're going to need the grip of the full suspension when you're really sat down in that seat. So take a look at your local trails, where you're going to be riding most, and judge it on that rather than the techniques that you use. Hope that's helpful. Next up is from Finn22, and he says, can you weld a crack in an aluminium frame? Well, this one's tricky because, you know what, you definitely can do it. You probably need to get someone who's experienced in welding aluminium to do it, because there's lots of different types of aluminium and they need to be treated differently. But you know what I always think? Once a frame's cracked, unless it's something that's really easy to repair, like a steel frame, which is a lot easier, then I would look to changing it, because if there's a crack, it might be because the frame just needs replacing, there's other faults in the frame, and maybe it's time just to move on. There's nothing worse than riding a bike and it breaking and causing injury, which can really suck. So if it's got a crack, really think about, can it be fixed? But if you're gonna get it fixed, make sure you do it really well, because it's obviously worth the effort, and get someone experienced to do it. That's what I'd say. Jacob1910 says, what should I do when I have the world's stiffest fork on my heavy hardtail with XC geometry and I want to learn wheelies, manuals, bunny hops, and by the way, it's a 2014 Scott Aspect. Look, you know what? You can't use the tool as an excuse. It's that old story, isn't it? Bad workman blames his tools. You can do a wheelie, a manual, and a bunny hop on any bike, literally any bike, except maybe a penny farthing or a tandem. And I'm figuring you're not going to be riding those anytime soon. So you've got to, if you want those skills, then you can learn them. Don't use the bike as an excuse. But if you want to move on to a nice bike, then just, you know, let yourself do it, man. Enjoy the moment. That's what it's all about. You don't need a reason. It can just be for fun. That's what I always do, and I've got tons of bikes. James Turner says, hey gents, love getting out on the bike, particularly the techie stuff. Really want to improve jumping, and imagine having the correct bike would make it learning a lot easier. What style of bike would you recommend? Stick with an enduro or sneak another bike, like a jump bike, into the garage? Well, I would never say no to sneaking another bike into the garage, as I just said. But learning jumps is tricky, because if you're learning jumps that you would use on the trail, then I would stick with your Enduro XC bike. If you want to learn dirt jump, real kicky takeoffs and steep landings, then I'd think about moving on to a dirt jump bike that's specific for that, because it's a very different response and a very different jump, quite frankly. But if you're trying to be Nino Schurter, then maybe stay on the enduro rig. If you're trying to be Nikolai Rogatkin, then a jump bike. If you're looking for someone in between, a bit like Blake Sampson maybe, or Neil Donahue, they're a good mixture of those two guys. Well, those guys, they can just ride anything. So I'd stick with what you've got. But you know what? When we're talking about jumping, I really like to get inspired, and I don't think this video could do any better than inspiring you. So take a look at the Darkfest video, where you can see some huge jumps that Blake hit this year.
Take 15 unique freeriders from around the globe, including myself, and stick 9 massive jumps in front of them. This is Darkfest.
Oh man, I love that video. So good, I love that event. It's good to see Blake having a great time on a big old jump. I don't get to see him nervous enough. Next question though, carrying on with Ask GMBN. The Huckster says, so why do mountain bikes use tyres the same size, i.e. 26, 27.5 or 29 on the front and rear? In dirt bikes they don't, so why doesn't that transfer to MTB? I see what you're saying. On motocross bikes you might see a much smaller rear wheel with a much bigger tyre. Well, you know what, actually there is that starting to happen. Canyon have got an e-bike out which has actually got different sized wheels, so it's starting to happen, and maybe because of the introduction of e-bikes we're going to start to see more of that. So it's quite an interesting question, and I would say watch this space and see how that turns out. Hunky Hayward says, that's a weird name. Hunky Hayward says, I have a knee condition called Osgood Schlatters, and although the pain will go soon, there will always be a bump about 2 inches lower than his kneecap. All of the knee pads do not work because of it, and wanted to know if he knows of any knee pads that fit specific for Osgood Schlatters. It's pretty common. You know what? It might be pretty common. I've never heard of it, I'll be absolutely honest. But I thought this was a great question to throw out to you guys, because Hunky Hayward wants an answer to this. Sounds like there's some pain going on. It'll be great to solve it for him. So if you know if there's any particular products for knee protection that work really well for that condition, Osgood Schlatters, then let us know in the comment section down below. Get involved. We are a community after all, and it'll be really good to help out Hunky Hayward. But I will suggest changing the name because it just feels weird saying it. But there we are. Albert Schinkler says, gotta keep asking the same question. What's the limit for fully rigid steel mountain bikes? How rough a trail is too rough to not break a rigid bike? I don't think there is a trail that's too rough for a rigid bike. I think it's all about how you ride it. I've ridden some rigid bikes on some pretty crazy stuff in my time, and I think you just need to adjust to the trail. I'm sure if you put Aaron Gwynn on a fully rigid bike up front and rear, and you put him on the Mont Saint Anne track or something like that, he would go down it incredibly quick, and he could probably get the bike to the bottom all in one piece, if he wanted to. If that guy rides at race pace, then I expect he would break the rigid bike, just like he can sometimes break his downhill bike. Wolf MTB is asking, when I brake, I get a bit of a wiggle at the front end and I can't identify where it's coming from. I've checked the steerer tube and the fork itself. Can't see any movement. What could it be? Well, you know what I'd check? Because you're feeling it in the braking, it makes you think about how the headset could be moving or the forks. But I would be thinking, is the actual brake caliper moving on the fork mount? Because sometimes that can come a little bit loose and you get a little bit of movement in the caliper. So I'd just take an Allen key, just go down and just tweak those, make sure they're tight. The little bit of movement there, you'll feel it tons. It'll feel like the front end of the bike's coming off. And actually it's just a simple adjustment. The brake tightens up and it's all solved. So that would be my first port of call. Let us know if you get that fixed. And if this can help, I hope it does. Let's take a look at how to adjust your brakes.
So I actually recommend setting your brake lever up so it's moved right in on the handlebar, so you can't actually fit more than one finger on there. So a lot of people do use 2 fingers, but actually slide it in a little bit further. You just get much more grip on the handlebars if you've got these 3 fingers and your thumb wrapped around. So slide it in. There you go. My one finger rests right on the very end, so I'll just tighten that up slightly for now.
Okay, time for Correct Me If I'm Wrong, where time is tight and we're going to rush through as many questions as we can. So let's get going. Thomas Ashcroft is saying, are you guys going to Whistler again this year? Be sick to have another episode from Whistler. Mike, am I going?
Yes.
Yes. Mark Skinner says the crash at 11 minutes last week was cased and it was because he was filming in portrait mode. I'm with you. Filming in portrait mode should just be illegal. Zula Travel says, good job on your own, Blake, last week. Is this an insight into what it's going to be like for Deck without Ant helping to present? Okay, that's a very popular duo in the UK here, Ant and Deck. Ant is currently busy. We'll leave it at that. Charlie Whitfield says, come ride Bel Air in Adelaide, South Australia. Conor Fearon, Troy Brosnan, they've all ridden there. Great trails. I would love to. Just send me a ticket, I'll be there. Lee Bridgewater, nice one, Blake, taking the helm. Blake's getting a lot of love for taking the helm on his own, isn't he? I hope I get some next week. You watch, I'll get loads of stick. SP Frills says, what's up with the hidden frame at 6 minutes? I don't know what that's about. Was there a hidden frame at 6 minutes? Oh my God, something I don't know about? What's going on when Blake presents this show? Lastly, Jamie Hammond, can I put suspension forks on my BMX, which would turn it into a dirt jump mountain bike? No. No, you can't. That would just be stupid. Correct me if I'm wrong. That jingle might not stick, but you know, let's give it a chance. Let's get into this week's video that we've been sent in from Callum Park, who's trying to get his whips down. Don't we all want to do that? So I'm going to take a look at this vid, see if I can fix it up and improve it and get you looking like Nino Schurter anytime soon, doing tree bonks and all sorts. All right, Callum, let's do it. Getting into this, coming into a ramp in a skate park, looking nice. Ooh, we've gone out of that takeoff very straight. And there's the whip. The position in the air is good, really good, but you can see it's just not coming back. If that was to a landing, you'd be landing at nearly 90 degrees, which is not what you want. And I'll tell you what, it's easily fixed. Sounds weird, but what you need to do is slightly turn the bike up the takeoff. So you draft into the corner of the jump, and that will start the whip off, and then you can let the bike go out and it will start to come back, which is the important thing. If you go up the ramp totally straight and then try and do all the movement in the air, then it's going to catch you out. So whip it out of the takeoff, up like that, and it will start to come back, and you'll land lovely and clean, and you get Nino cheers when you land, which is great. But try not to be too stiff back, because sometimes Nino does, and it just looks gross. Right, thank you for watching this week's Ask GMBN. It's been an absolute blast. We've got a great video just there you can click on. It's a versus video. It's a fat bike versus trail bike on a pump track, which is ace. Definitely check that out. And remember that Darkfest video that Blake did just there. Very inspiring and lots of fun. Click on the globe to subscribe, and don't forget to give me a thumbs up like, even if it's just because Blake didn't turn up this week.